We've talked a lot on this channel about why the Trump administration does what it does. And it's been difficult to analyze their behavior consistently, I think, because there's so much incompetence thrown into the mix. There are obvious intentions, right? We know the broad things they want. They want a white Christian ethno-state. They want infinite power for the president. They want infinite power for their federal police, who they're using as Gestapo, right? To an extent, they also just want to farm aura and hype moments online because it seems like a lot of the administration is very online and really susceptible to that kind of, engagement farming. Nonetheless, many people have wondered, why are they doing what they're doing in Minnesota? What's the goal here? I said yesterday that at this point, ICE is so widely resisted in Minnesota and so unpopular that even if the Trump administration decides to remove themselves from Minnesota, right, they pull out, they end the operation, people will celebrate it as a win for the anti-ICE people. At this point, like, they will understand this to be a defeat for the administration. Now we have a pullout condition. Take a look at this. Pam Bondi, the other day, sent a letter to Minnesota officials saying that ICE would leave the state if they turn over its voter files. The reminder to everyone here that in the United States, all business concerning elections, everything, your voter registries, how elections are conducted, they're run by the states. That's constitutionally protected. This is in the letter from Pam Bondi, the important part. Second, repeal the sanctuary policies that have led to so much crime and violence in your state. Removing criminal illegal aliens from Minnesota neighborhoods will save lives. Don't be a sanctuary state anymore. Third, allow the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice to access voter rolls to confirm Minnesota's voter registration practices comply with federal law as authorized by the Civil Rights Act of 1960. Fulfilling this common sense request will guarantee free and fair elections and boost confidence in the rule of law. Their signature is so bad. She does have the signature of a 5-year-old. That is true. How likely is Walz to accept? I don't think Walz will accept. For one, this wouldn't just be up to Walz. Like, this is a broad, it's not just the governor, it's also the House and Senate, and it's insane, absolutely insane. Why do they want this data? Because this would allow them to cook the books. So here's what they want, okay? The thing they want most of all is evidence of voter fraud. Like, you turn over the voter registry and there's a bunch of incongruency in there that they can point at and go, oh, you have Somalis doing votes, whatever. Now, they won't find it because that's not how reality works. Millions of dollars have been spent time and time again, endless probes into voter fraud. It just isn't happening. It's not happening, right? What they will do, however, is cook the books themselves. They will access this registry, and they will either alter it or they will look over it and accuse the state of allowing fraud by pointing at things that are not fraudulent. This is nakedly an attempted voter interference, because if the DOJ can make an argument, no matter how bad, that the state's voter rolls indicate that it is not complying with the requirements of the Civil Rights Act of 1960, they get to sue and they get to blow the whole thing up. And then, congratulations, folks, this is the story we lead into in the midterms. Deep blue, Somali-run Tim Walz state of Minnesota under attack by voter fraud. Investigations from our hero Pam Bondi have uncovered legions and legions of fraudsters, tearing the state apart. Who knows? This must be how Biden won in 2020, you know? It's the only explanation. Now, obviously, through these lawsuits, we are forcing the state of Minnesota to comply. You understand how a news story like that could be used to justify any number of actions from the federal government, up to and including the deployment of the National Guard or of federal police? Why is the Trump admin targeting Minnesota specifically? For one, there's already a widespread story about Minnesota being full of Somali fraudsters. It plays to their narrative. For two, this is a convenient exit strategy for them. Obviously, ICE is not getting what they want in Minnesota, and they want an out, but there's no way for them to leave on even terms without it looking like a failure. This is a way of getting two things they want: the voter IDs and an excuse to leave, something that makes them look high-minded. Thanks, Nick Shirley. Unironically, he did prompt all of this, yeah. We are Nick Shirley. We carry the flame. Very useful idiot. He's not really, well, he is an idiot, but he's not being taken advantage of. He's aware of the fact that he's an agent of the state.
By now you've seen this horrific video, another individual killed in Minnesota. It's just awful. the inhumanity of this. We cannot fund ICE as it is constituted today.
We cannot fund ICE as it exists today. Thank you.
But we found out something else really important today. Pam Bondi sent a letter to state officials in Minnesota in which she made a list of demands for ICE to leave Minneapolis. And one of those demands was that the state turn over its voter rolls to the federal government. This has never been about public safety. Minneapolis is a much less safe place today because ICE is there. This is likely about trying to rig and steal the election. Donald Trump is wildly unpopular. He is not committed to democracy. And he knows the only way that his movement is to retain power, the only way that his corporate allies retain power, his billionaire allies retain power this November, is for Trump to steal the election. And so he's saying to Minneapolis, if you don't give me control of the voter rolls, then ICE isn't leaving. And you can see that if he gets away with it in Minnesota, he's likely going to try it in places like Philadelphia.
It's a shakedown. This is legitimately terrifying. I need you guys to whoa. Sorry, my keyboard's still broken. New one's coming in tomorrow. This is legitimately terrifying, okay? The fact that elections are controlled by the states is the number one thing that has prevented Donald Trump from just seizing everything, you know? Even for a red state like Texas, there's not really a mechanism by which the federal government can directly enact control over the voting process. By turning over voter rolls, you give the federal government basically unprecedented insight into the inner workings in a way that would allow them to understand vulnerabilities or engage in targeted action. Like, it really could preempt deploying the National Guard specifically to voting booths, harassing people who are black or brown outside of voting stations, knowing they're more likely to vote Democrat. This is what they would do to set in motion everything we're worried about them doing. I also don't really think it would work. I think they're trying for it, but I don't necessarily think that it would work. Even if they went for this, I really don't think they would be able to get enough motion in the courts. Any impropriety they found would allow them to do is file a lawsuit. And if they file that lawsuit, where does it go? The courts. And the courts historically have not been favorable to the administration's demands. It makes me think that they might use this. I think that this could potentially get very loud and very messy, but I would be surprised if they were able to leverage it in a way that made a massive difference. Dominion voting machines were bought by a GOP guy, so concerning? Yes, that is true. The Dominion voting machine company was bought by a Trump supporter who then immediately took over the website of the company and said that these were now pro-America freedom voting machines that would do the right thing. Wink. So, you know, they are trying to call a mess. She also does want them to remove or to share records on Medicaid and SNAP and, get rid of the sanctuary status, which I, again, don't think he's going to do. This specific angle is something the Dems have been having lawyers working on, preparing for. It's also the area where there's been the most prep. I will never, ever, ever trust the Democrats to do their job properly. I will always trust them to fail, and if they break my trust and succeed, I will be surprised by it every time. I trust them less than Republicans. You should. At least you can trust Republicans to be consistently evil. What's the response from Tim? I'm not sure if Tim has responded. Response from Minnesota's Secretary of State. Our answer to Attorney General Bondi's request is no. Her letter is an outrageous attempt to coerce Minnesota into giving federal government private data to millions of U.S. citizens in violation of state and federal law. It makes me wonder, though, if this is the strategy that they're going to go with moving forward. Are they going to turn up the heat on Minnesota? Like, are they going to start killing more people in an attempt to strong-arm Tim Walz into going ahead with this? Maybe, maybe not. That won't work. It wouldn't be likely to work, but Democrats have rolled over for less. Walz got asked about it? Oh, please.
Walz, you got a letter from Attorney General Pam Bondi making several demands, I guess you would call them, regarding sanctuary cities, regarding fraud and voter rolls. Your response to that, and is there anything we can do to meet the Trump administration at least part of the way to try to turn this temperature?
Well, first of all, it's not a serious attempt, and the Attorney General sent that in. I would thank the local folks and Commissioner Snell. Thank you to you and your team over there. In that letter, they talked about, you need to hand people over who are in your jails. They're taking credit for people that we've had in jail for a long time. we always hand them over, and the commissioner very clearly. So they're lying. They're lying. This has nothing to do with fraud, as the Attorney General said. They're not sending us forensic accountants, and these are things that have been we're dealing with now and have been for quite some time. So look, it's not a serious attempt to get at this. The way to fix this is get these folks out of here. We've continued to work with them. They asked us for these numbers. We provided them. We continue to show, and they're not serious. And look, I think everybody understands what the last request was, totally unrelated to anything on the voter files. This is, again, as the Attorney General said, Donald Trump telling everybody that the election was rigged, who started all this nightmare for America. Has nothing to do with it. And I would just give a pro tip to the Attorney General. There's 2 million documents in the Epstein files we're still waiting on. Go ahead and work on those.
Okay. About as happy as I can reasonably be, given the circumstances, with a response. That translator is the most accurate one I've seen. You know they're good when they're getting silly with it, right? If you're like quickly translating into ASL, you've got to work the moves, you know?